because there'd be smartphone video of absolutely everything. The human nature is today. We want to film everything. And it was the same back then, but most people didn't have cameras alongside them. Nowadays, everyone has a camera on them, and you could easily film anything you want to do. But that wasn't the case back then in 2001. It really was, in many ways, a different world back in 2001. It's interesting to think about the context of the year, too. 2001 was a pretty good year up until that point. Lots of good stuff was going on. The economy was doing all right. It wasn't great, but it was doing all right. You just had George Bush elected after Clinton, and the Clinton economy was pretty good. And you got now you got the George Bush economy that's doing pretty well so far. Yeah, people are upset about George Bush being the new president, but that always happens. Overall, 2001 was a pretty good year up until 9/11 happened. It seemed really optimistic. It was still very, I guess, 90s in its mindset. Like 2001 still sort of was in the 90s a little bit in terms of just how we thought and talked and operated. It's kind of like how 1991 was still kind of 80s, late 80s in a lot of ways. 2001 was the same way with the 90s. So people were still listening to grunge. That was still a thing then. Radio was playing Rage Against the Machine at the time. That was still a relevant band back then. It's weird. It was a weird time to think about now, but back then everything seemed completely normal. And Tuesday, 9/11 on what happened on a Tuesday could not have been a more normal day when it started out. It was a great day. I remember. I was a little kid, but I remember. And I don't want to spend all day talking about this, but it's Friday and it's the last day we get to talk before Sunday, which is the 15-year anniversary. But it was a great day because Tuesday, and I was a little kid, by the way. I'm not old or anything. I was pretty young. And you're going to laugh at this. I was supposed to go to choir practice on 9/11. Believe it or not, I was supposed to go to choir practice because I was a little kid who had a high-pitched, little squeaky voice, and I was supposed to go to choir practice. And my mom just turned on TV before we left, and it was on Fox. Pardon me. It was on Fox, and you saw what was happening. The first plane had hit. This was about maybe about 9 a.m. I'm wanting to say. The first plane had hit, and obviously there's no footage of the first plane hitting as far as we know, aside from that guy who filmed it from the interstate. And then, a few minutes later, the second plane hits, and my dad calls on the phone and says, my friend who works in he worked in the Navy at the time. My friend who works in the Navy says Saudi Arabia just attacked us. And that was what the narrative was at the time. At least among our family, was that it was Saudi Arabia that did it, because that seemed to make the most sense at the time. I'm not sure why that made the most sense, but then people started naming Saddam Hussein, and then people started saying, well, no, it was Osama bin Laden, who was a pretty well-known terrorist at the time. Osama bin Laden wasn't an unknown name. And then things started to sort of spiral out of control, and the narrative got all twisted around, and it just got confusing. But for a little kid, that's not something that's easy to understand. You don't understand international terrorism. You don't understand motives behind international terrorism. When you're a little kid, all you know is there are people who hate you who want to kill you, because that's the narrative, right? That's what we all thought when we were little kids. And it was scary almost, the amount of, I don't want to say patriotism because I don't think that's the right word, but the amount of warmongering that was going on with a lot of people, even younger kids my age, who were excited about the idea of a war happening. And I think that might be partially human nature, just we want conflict. But it was a bizarre environment, and you probably remember it more than I do. And I want to get your phone calls too. That's 423-800-8949. Here in Chattanooga, we were very, what's the word for it? Understanding, I suppose. The community in Chattanooga always sort of comes together. And it was the only time I remember ever seeing everyone being down, everyone looking really glum. I remember everyone looking just the most depressed you've ever seen anyone, is how people looked when we went to the store that day, because that was our normal shopping day. Actually, we went to the store and just everyone looked depressed, everybody. And you could see people who were hearing about it for the first time, and I only barely remember this because I was just a young kid, but it was a bizarre environment to be in. And I remember my mother saying something that was kind of weird, I thought at the time. My mother saying, "I'm glad your grandfather passed a year ago, because it's a good thing he didn't live to see this." And I always thought that was just a kind of an odd thing to say, but I sort of understand it now. My grandfather was a veteran of World War II. He was in the Navy. I don't think he ever saw combat. Not that that matters too much, but he was a radio operator in the Navy at the tail end of World War II. He's actually buried in the National Cemetery here in Chattanooga, believe it or not. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird. Weird's the only way I can describe it in my head. It's just bizarre. The more you read about it, the more bizarre it seems. And then you have all the different speculations, right? I don't want to say theories because, yeah, they are theories, but calling them theories plays in with the narrative that, anything that doesn't go along with the official narrative is some fringe thing. Because I'm open to all interpretations, honestly. And there's a lot of strange ones and there's a lot of plausible ones. And I'm kind of on the fence about what I think about 9/11. I'll be honest with you. I think that the official narrative is a little bit wonky. I don't think that it makes enough sense for me. I think that's it. It just doesn't make enough sense for me. And I went through a period of life where I was a really big, I don't want to say conspiracy nut, but I spent all my time reading about them. And I still think they're really interesting, but I also think sometimes they're just better things to do than sit around reading about different theories about, the JFK assassination and 9/11 and the Pentagon and Lynchburg and all these sorts of things. And they're good to read about. Don't get me wrong. It just seems like spending all my time doing that was a waste of time. And I wish I had done better things with my life at the time. But, you can't do anything about that now. What do you think about the whole shebang? That maybe is a bad word to use. What do you think about the whole big issue of 9/11? What do you remember about 2001? I always like hearing people's stories about it, mostly because of morbid curiosity, but also because most of the people who have stories to tell about that day were a lot older than me when it happened. You have to remember, 15 years ago is a long time ago. It's a very long time ago in terms of memory. And most people don't remember things that happened 15 years ago. But this event is one that will always stick in our minds as Americans and even as non-Americans. It's an event that affected everybody in the world. How many events can you say affected everyone in the world? And I really do think 9/11 did. The number to call in is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949 is the number to call in here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com. I'm interested in hearing your 9/11 stories. This is Best Shot, by the way, your show here on Hot News Talk Radio, where we talk about all the different things that are going on in the Chattanooga area and also on our Twitter and Facebook page. There's a man who is missing, by the way, from Bradley County. And I want to spread the word about this because he's been missing since, I believe, August. And his picture is on our Facebook page now. But if you go to Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, it's pretty easy. You go to facebook.com/Hot News 1240, or you can just search for Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. And who is missing here in Chattanooga, and his name is Joshua Arp, spelled normally ARP, and he's been missing from Bradley County for quite a long time. His family is wanting your help. He should be on our Facebook page right now, at least a photo of him. If not, you can Google Joshua Arp. He was wanted for armed robbery in Cleveland, but it appears that he is mentally ill. He has PTSD and schizophrenia, according to his family, and he is missing. They say he's more of a danger to himself than he is to anyone else. Also, a bit of a PSA here. Market Street Bridge is going to be closed for a short time on Sunday the 11th. That's September the 11th, a Sunday. The Market Street Bridge is going to be closed for a short time for quarterly maintenance. Kind of an odd day to do quarterly maintenance on the 11th, but I guess that's how they do it over there. There's a post on our Facebook page right now. Sorry, not Facebook, on our Twitter page right now, which is your city on socialism and your hospital on socialism. And they're very decrepit, rundown looking establishments. And that is how it is. That really is how it is. Whenever you allow socialism on a broad scale, or really any scale, into your community, whenever the community becomes complacent enough to let the government run things for it, things immediately start to break apart. Because people individually are much stronger than governments can be. Think about the influence of an individual versus the influence of a government. An individual can have 1,000 times more influence than any government can. Think about figures in history who have changed the world, and we don't remember the governments behind them. We just remember the people. And that's so true, where people are much more influential than governments are. And communities, too, who band together, which band together can be more influential than governments are. You don't need government to have an effective cohesion of people. I'm so sick of this derision and this division that we have in our society today. And it seems like it's getting worse and worse, where people are getting turned against each other for just petty reasons. I was talking about this with a friend of mine the other day, where there are people, even within their own communities, who will deride each other for looking different or for acting a little bit differently. Even though they're normal, regular, fine people, for some reason we feel a need to sort of like tribalize almost and make fun of people or deride people for being different from us. Why? Especially in our own communities, it doesn't make any sense to break ourselves apart when we could do so much better working together. And I don't mean that in a communistic sense. I mean, why don't we just work together? Why are we constantly infighting with each other? I know infighting with each other is a redundancy, but why do we keep fighting with each other? Why can't we, and this is an old phrase, but why can't we all just get along? And there are, reasons. There's human nature and there's sin, and it makes sense sometimes why people don't get along. But in the grand scheme of things, I wish we could have a conversation someday, not even just a conversation, just an understanding that most people don't want to hurt other people. I don't want to hurt you, and you probably don't want to hurt me. And if we all have kind of that understanding, probably things will be a lot better. And that's a pipe dream, and that's a utopian idea that'll never really happen in truth. But it's one that I wish could. It's just something that I wish could happen, because I'm so sick of this derision and this division that's being sponsored in our communities, where people will dislike or distrust each other just by nature of how they were born. That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's not free market either. It really isn't. A free market system doesn't care who you are, as long as you can spend the money or as long as you can be useful to the community in your own way. It doesn't matter who you are in a true free market society. It doesn't matter, because the free market can't profit off of racism or off of sexism or any other sort of discrimination against people who are doing you no harm. Free markets don't benefit from that. So a true free market system doesn't have that. Now, governments will sponsor it all the time, but free markets shouldn't have that ever, because there is no profit to be had. Now, you might have a shopkeeper who's a bad guy, and he has a right to be a bad guy if he wants to be, but he's going to lose business as a result of it. And again, that's the free market at work. So it's a complicated thing, but at the same time, it's really not. Because if we just agreed that, we'll shop at this guy's store and I'll shop at that guy's store and it's all hunky-dory, things would be so much better. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sponsored hate among people, and I just wish that it weren't so, because we could all be so much better without that kind of nonsense. It's sad to me that here in America, right here in the United States, we, for some reason, allow ourselves to divide in such a way that we care about what race somebody is, or we care about what someone's preferences are. Who cares, right? And I don't even mean that necessarily religiously as a religious argument, but just from a market argument. Why should we care? It doesn't make any sense to. So I'm tired of this whole division nonsense that goes around, because it really only serves to divide the people and to make them less aware of what's really happening around them. And that's ultimately an end goal, I think. Public education plays a huge part into that. Lots of other government-sponsored systems play into that. And government, honestly, isn't entirely at fault. People are as well, because people have allowed it to happen over the years. Again, thinking about 9/11, after 9/11, we became fearful. We became fearful of a people who might do something to us. So we decided to allow Homeland Security in. And then we decided to be okay with the NSA doing what it did. And we decided to be okay with spying on people without a warrant. And all sorts of different agencies suddenly stepped up the supposed anti-terror game in order to tread on people's rights. What point is there to having a society if it's not free? What's even the point? I don't understand how anyone could work for one of these government agencies that supposedly fights for freedom and then treads on everyone else's freedom. How can you live with yourself doing that? It's such a nonsensical thing that it's almost laughable, where you have people who work in government agencies who claim, well, I fight for freedom. But in actuality, they're just treading on other people's rights, which erodes our freedom. What's the point of having a country if it's not free? What's the point of fighting for freedom if the freedom you're fighting for isn't actually freedom? What's the point? What have you accomplished in doing that? Can you name even one thing? And most people can't, who work for these agencies. And I'm not talking about military. I'm talking about agencies like the NSA, like Homeland Security, like the TSA, all these different agencies which will inherently, military doesn't inherently tread on your rights. I mean, agencies which inherently tread on your rights. The TSA has to, just by job description. The NSA has to, by job description. It's basically in their charter. They have to tread on your rights. So why do we allow them to exist? Why did they start to exist anyway? Because of apathy, because of maliciousness on the side of people who started these agencies and apathy on the side of people who could have stopped them. And that's the story of modern America, I think. That's the story of post 9/11 America. That doesn't mean that there's no hope for us, because I do believe that there is. But it doesn't lie in government programs. It lies in us. It lies in God. Faith in God, and faith a little bit in our ability to fix things, because we can through free markets. We can through changing things ourselves in our own communities, not through relying on governments to do it. We can only do this through the grace of God, but we can do it. This is Best Shot here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. Check us out on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone, where you can listen to us streaming live anywhere in the world on your smartphone.
News Talk 1240 AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, with your chance to win $124 in cash and $124 in food every week with the Hot News Talk Radio 1, 2, 3 NASCAR contest. Hot News Talk 1240. All you have to do is guess who's going to be first, second, and third place in the upcoming NASCAR Sprint Cup race. If you guess it, you'll hear your name live Monday morning at 11:30. Then call AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio to win. Enter your guess right now at Rick Davis Golden Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Diesel Off-Road Technology Saudi Daisy for your four-wheel drive and truck needs. Stuff and upholstery with premium rubber foam. Amigos Mexican Restaurant next to Staples and Hickson. Drink specials during the race. Cell Surgeon, the Broken Screen Doc. And Shooter's Supply, 4824 Hickson Pike in Hickson. Hot News Talk 1240. Enter your guesses now and listen to the race live to win $124 in cash and $124 in food from Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station. Hot News Talk 1240. I love NASCAR.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. An armed citizen stopped a manhunt suspect dead in his tracks at a landfill in Bradley County. It all started with a routine traffic stop where two men were stopped in Meigs County. They went on the run through Hamilton County and then into Bradley County, leading police on a high-speed car chase through Highway 58. Their car apparently crashed at a landfill where one suspect escaped on foot but was eventually apprehended. The other one ran. The other suspect shot and killed by a sanitation employee at that landfill. Fire crews are battling an early morning inferno at 4 a.m. this morning. They say that it's a structure fire, but there may have been a woman and a 7-year-old boy inside. EMS is on scene trying to gather more details. Shots rang out on Highway 58, and apparently the police say that it was an accidental shooting. A victim has been taken to the hospital in a personal vehicle. He's expected to recover. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Make sure you like us on Facebook and get us on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone.
We're at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Yes, sir. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans, 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NASCAR. Every race. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers, just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular, and it's only $3 all day. If you come here on a race day, Sunday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NASCAR, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans, under a bright sun, but no gasoline fumes, no heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos between Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the next table to mine. Enjoy the NASCAR race with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it's started.
Drivers, start your engines.
Cash, 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 and more cash. Rick Davis has the cash. Need Labor Day cash? Rick Davis will give you top dollar for your gold, silver, diamonds, and coins. You'll get international prices. It's like he's giving away money. Labor Day cash and top dollar for your gold, silver, diamonds, and coins. There he goes! More cash out the door from Rick. Need Labor Day cash? Rick Davis will give you top dollar. Top dollar for your gold, silver, diamonds, and coins. Cash, 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 and more cash. Rick Davis has the cash and diamonds. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. 5301 Brader Road. You know where it is.
Rubber's tough, but foam rubber is soft. Foam rubber is the star at Stuff It Upholstery, which uses it to revive your couch, your embarrassing easy chair, your boat seat cushions. Stuff It Foam Rubber in Hickson covers Chattanooga and surrounding areas. Don't throw out that favorite easy chair that's grown haggard and barbaric. New life for your seat cushions. Premium auto-grade rubber foam for your restaurant, church, or business. Stuff It Upholstery brings comfort and relief. Go ahead, skid away from flat, dull, and droopy cushions. Relax, restore, revive. When comfort matters, stuff it. Mention Monica Lewinsky. Get 10 cents off on the dollar. 877-1616. That's 877-1616.
Wholesale liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell, featuring over 6,000 square feet of unique and everyday wholesale items, discounted at, get this, 50 to 75% off of retail, from new and pre-owned tools to chainsaws and auto accessories. Wholesale liquidation, Highway 58, next to Taco Bell.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station. Fox News Talk 1240.
Well, 15 years later, and we're still thinking about it. We'll probably be thinking about it 100 years from now, too. This is the almost 15-year anniversary of 9/11, one of the most important events in American history, and definitely the most important event so far of the 21st century. It's something that we actually will never forget. It seems cliche, but it probably is true. People of our generation, our generations, I should say, will never forget what happened on 9/11. And it's odd to think, too, that there are people who are born who just don't remember it. For example, I know kids who were born in 2005 and they're 11 years old now. I know kids who were born in 1998 and they don't remember. I know kids who were born in the year 2000. So my family members born in 2000 and they obviously don't remember anything about it. And that's such an odd, bizarre thing that there are kids who are, very mature young people walking around. Some of them might even be politically active. They can't vote yet, but that doesn't mean you can't be politically active. And they don't remember 9/11. They never saw it on TV, live, I should say. It's so odd to me that you could be around and not have seen that. Not that it's their fault or anything. Obviously, they can't help that. But it's just odd to me that it's been that long. And soon there will be people who will work for me, who haven't seen it. And it's just odd to think about. It's just bizarre. Something that we posted on our Hot News Talk Radio page on Facebook, by the way, is something interesting about the World Trade Center tower that everyone kind of forgets, which is 7. Everyone sort of forgets about World Trade Center 7. And the number to call in here is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949 is the number to call in here at Hot News Talk Radio. And hotnewstalkradio.com. Everyone sort of forgets about WTC 7, though. There's been a lot of speculation about what exactly happened at WTC 7. And Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth is a website. It's ae911truth.org that's done on what precisely happened on 9/11. And specifically, Building 7 has been a subject of scrutiny for a long time since it happened initially. And the video of it getting released, and that's a fraction of what happened, of course, shown in the video. And then the Pentagon, you may remember, the plane hitting the Pentagon. There's, I think, 10 or 11 frames of video of a plane hitting the Pentagon. It's barely even there. But this website says Dr. Robert Corroll, there we go, Professor Emeritus of Civil Engineering at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and fellow of the Canadian Society for Civil Engineering, has led a team of academic researchers in preparing 2 peer-reviewed scientific papers on the destruction of World Trade Center Building 7. Both papers were published in the Challenge Journal of Structural Mechanics, the first one in July 2015 and the second one in February of this year, 2016. Prior to publishing the papers, the team of researchers carefully reviewed the work of Zdeněk Bazant, I believe, who's a professor of civil engineering and materials science at Northwestern University. So essentially, they did a long study on what exactly happened with Building 7 and how it could have happened. And they've done extensive research, they say, on the axial loading properties of steel columns and beams. And he appeared in a documentary called 9/11, The Academic Community, and he's in his lab in Ontario. And essentially what they're saying is the building couldn't have really fallen the way that it did without some sort of help. We'll put it that way, without some sort of help. And one person in particular who I think is worth looking up, even if you don't really think anything aside from the regular old narrative happened on 9/11, one person to look up is named Larry Silverstein. And he's someone who you're definitely going to want to look into. Larry Silverstein apparently had quite a bit to do with what exactly happened on 9/11. Larry Silverstein is someone who actually owned some of the buildings, WTC 7 being one of them, and he may or may not have put out an order to pull it, so to speak. It's a interesting thing to look into. Larry Silverstein is an interesting character, and but all of his family somehow magically wasn't in the building on 9/11 as well. None of his family members were actually inside the building on 9/11, even though they were scheduled to have been. There were various events that kept them out of there. And reasoning for that, well, I'll leave that up to you to decide, because it's an interesting topic. And the thing about 9/11 is you can't really tell anybody anything. You know what I mean? If you try to tell somebody who doesn't believe at all that there's anything, any sort of funny business going on with 9/11, you try to tell them what you think about it, and you think something funny happened there, they're not really going to go along with it. You know, people never do. People, for the most part, don't want to think that anything governmentally related could have happened with 9/11 because it's an uncomfortable thought. And I think that that's the thought that happens with a lot of people. I think some people who we air here on our radio station think that way too. And I'm not going to name names and throw them under the bus or anything. I don't mean people who are live in the studio. I mean people who we air over satellite. I think that they are just uncomfortable with the idea of government having anything at all to do with 9/11. And that's why they don't want to believe it. And it's not a matter of wanting to believe something or not. It's wanting to know the truth. I don't care if the truth is uncomfortable. I just want to know what happened. And if you're unbiased and you look at it with an unbiased eye, it seems no matter what, you have to admit there's at least some small details. There are some small details that just don't line up with what the official 9/11 Commission found. It's such an odd event. It's such a huge scale event that it's hard to get every detail lined up. And I don't think anyone could ever possibly have every detail lined up. But it's something interesting to note. I was watching a documentary the BBC put out back in 2005 about people who jumped out of the towers. I'm sure you remember if you saw the footage. People jumped out of the towers on 9/11. The New York City coroner's office denied that anyone jumped out of the towers. They said people were blasted out by the initial blast. Now, we all know now that's not true. But still, an official statement was made, and a government agency acted like that was the truth, even though it was not, and it very obviously was not. So it just goes to show, even at a small level, people are willing to lie. People are willing to be deceitful, or at least come out with half-truths or with statements before they know the whole fact. And that doesn't really point towards a reliable source by really any stretch of the imagination. The problem, though, with looking into 9/11 is a lot of time your source is going to be some guy on the internet, you know, and that just doesn't feel too good, you know, some guy on the internet being your source. So it is nice to have organizations like Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth looking into it, because these are real accredited people at actual real universities who have degrees in various science fields who are looking into it deeper, it seems, than anyone on the 9/11 Commission ever did. So Architects and Engineers for 9/11truth.org, really good stuff on there. I'm not advertising them by any means. It's just an interesting source. It's a good website to check out. Something sort of as a side note, by the way, for those of you maybe who believe that 9/11 was perpetrated by radical Islamic terrorists, you might be a little bit upset about this. We posted it on our Facebook page, our Twitter page, Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. We are basically all over social media, Twitter being our main feed when it comes to stream of consciousness. Twitter is our main source for that. A 9/11 monument apparently is causing controversy in the small town of Owego, New York. The Islamic Organization of the Southern Tier, interesting name, has taken issue with the writing on the monument, which calls the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks Islamic terrorists. The group is concerned that the wording unfairly paints all Muslims with the same brush and could encourage hatred towards Muslims living in the area. They're requesting that the monument instead read terrorists or Al-Qaeda terrorists. Town Supervisor Donald Castellucci, however, is pushing back, saying, I don't live in a politically correct world. He says, I live in a historical fact world, and cross-terrorism, whatever it's American, homegrown, Christianity, Islamic, you call it what it is, and we don't whitewash things, he says, especially here in Owego, New York, he's referring to. And we just think that we've done the accurate thing of citing what happened. And so it's a controversial subject, and you don't really think about it being a controversial subject sometimes because it's just what we've always been taught. It was radical Islamic terrorists who attacked the towers on 9/11. That's always been the narrative. And I think anyway, most people who would say Islamic terrorists don't mean every Islamic person is a terrorist. I don't think many people at all think that. And it seems like an overreaction on the side of that Islamic Council. It seems like making a stink out of nothing, probably, but I don't know. Here in Chattanooga, by the way, this is out on our Hot News Talk Radio page as well on Twitter. The Chattanooga Police Department is trying to find balance between privacy and transparency with body cameras here in Chattanooga. And that's a hot button issue, both for the cops and for average everyday people walking around, because on the side of the police, there may be some who just don't want their actions filmed. And on the side of the people, there might be some who just don't want their actions filmed. That's the thing. When you put body cameras on policemen, it basically turns them into walking surveillance cameras. And you don't want walking surveillance cameras because that violates your privacy all the time. So where do you draw the line? Yes, we want accountability. Yes, we want evidence that could either exonerate or could vilify a policeman if he does something wrong, or exonerate him if he's accused of doing something wrong and doesn't actually. Body cams are a very useful tool for that. Body cameras are a neutral item, right? They're objects. They don't have any moral implications in and of themselves because they are objects. But you have to understand that there is legal implication too. Putting body cameras on policemen, is that a wise move? Because would it violate the privacy of people walking down the street? Maybe. And I'm kind of on the fence about this issue myself. Most issues, I pretty much know what I think about them. But this one, I'm kind of not sure, because on the one hand, there needs to be accountability, and policemen who are doing nothing wrong should be fine with being filmed. But then again, that's the same argument that the government uses on the people, where they say, well, people who are doing nothing wrong shouldn't be afraid of having their emails searched through. So it's sort of an odd balance. But then you have to remember, too, that policemen are public servants. They're not acting in the capacity of a private citizen when they're wearing the badge and gun. So they sort of have that right, not really taken away, but suspended while they're operating officially as a employee of the state, or the city, I should say. So it's a complicated issue, and it's more complicated than probably most news agencies would like it to be, because you can't just have a regular, straightforward discussion about it on the 5 o'clock news. It's too long to have that. Well, the TFP says that early next year, they're talking about 2017, every Chattanooga police officer will be wearing a body camera. Whether you like it or not, that is the fact of it. But in the meantime, police officials must navigate the complicated issues of privacy, transparency, and public records as they craft policies to guide the use of these cameras. Officials must decide when officers should turn them on and off, what types of incidents should be recorded, how long video should be kept on file, under what circumstances administrators review that footage, how video should be released to the public, and a slew of similar matters. Now, I'm all for public disclosure. I think that if a record exists in a public agency, it should be available to the private within reason. A video of a police altercation, I think body camera footage should be available the entire length of it. There's nothing to hide there. It's an official agency that's being paid for with taxpayer dollars. The entire video should be released, swear words and all, blood and guts and all, because the public has a right to know what the police officers they're paying for are doing. And again, that's not saying, look at these bad policemen doing bad things. It's just saying, look, we're kind of paying their paychecks. Maybe we should know what they do sometimes in terms of how they operate, in terms of how policing is done. It's valuable to see. And it's not vilifying. It's a neutral thing. It is what it is. The filming of you in your job should not be a threatening thing if you're working an official job. There's a guy who I know who I highly respect who says that everyone from the dog catcher all the way up to the president should have 100% 24/7 surveillance. And there's an argument for that because they are public servants. And it's a complicated topic, and I tend to lean towards the surveillance part. But then again, there's also individual privacy. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue. Number to call in is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949 is the number to call in here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. Labor Day weekend happened, and it was really nice. Labor Day weekend was great. Most of us began our work week on Tuesday. We're still kind of recovering from that, some of us. It was a great weekend. Overall, really, really amazing weekend, Labor Day weekend, long weekend, and it's nice to have a day off. That's for sure. And I say that coming fresh off of vacation too. I don't know, something about vacation, something about having a day off. There's just nothing quite like it. I love my job and I love everything about it, but everyone needs a vacation once in a while. Everybody needs a day off once in a while. So it's always nice to have. And no matter what job you work, you could be making $100,000 and you absolutely love your job and it's like a party every day, but sometimes you just need a day off. And I think everybody deserves that to some degree. A day off is always a nice thing to have. Well, over Labor Day weekend, there were traffic stops. There were traffic barricades, checkpoints, I think they're calling them. There were traffic checkpoints around Hamilton County. And actually, there was only one in Hamilton County. But people on Facebook got riled up because we posted the location and time of these roadblocks. They're acting like we're somehow facilitating drunk drivers by telling people where the roadblocks are. But here's the thing. People have a right to know where the roadblocks are. We're not sharing classified information. We're not Hillary Clinton over here. What we're doing is sharing information that is public knowledge, that should be public knowledge, I should say. The place and location of traffic checkpoints are there. They're available for the public viewing so that people can avoid them. You can avoid traffic checkpoints, and it's perfectly legal to do. Everyone wants to do it, right? People get all up in arms. They get all high and mighty about the cops and about, they're, public safety and all that sort of thing. It's like, grow up, kids. Come on. Like people act like not going through a checkpoint makes you some commie red spy or something, but it really doesn't. It just means you don't want to be inconvenienced. Most people don't want to be. But these people act like, not wanting to go through a checkpoint or wanting people to know where checkpoints are make you the worst person imaginable. Like you're the next Hitler because you want people to be able to avoid checkpoints. Like, come on, kids. There are better issues to get angry about. But for some reason, people get riled up about, checkpoints of all things. But, I get being riled up about checkpoints because you hate them. But I don't get getting riled up about checkpoints because you think that they somehow, through some bizarro world you live in, actually prevent drunk drivers. Because statistics don't show that. Whether you like it or not, they don't. So I'm not sure where this logic and reasoning comes from that somehow delaying everybody's travel and inflicting upon your rights this unreasonable search and seizure is somehow an okay and constitutional thing to do. Because I'm sure Thomas Jefferson would love the idea of traffic checkpoints on Labor Day, right? And I think it's a little bit ironic that Labor Day, the day that celebrates the gentle laborer, is a day where we accost him by stopping him on his way to a party or on his way back from a party. It's ridiculous. And I'm all for catching drunk drivers. I'll say that. I am all for catching drunk drivers. That's a good thing, and it's a good thing police do it. I'm happy police stop drunk drivers, but there's a way to do that. And saturation patrols, again, I have no problem with the saturation patrols. That makes sense. But stopping people without a legal reason is not lawful. And even so, the Tennessee Supreme Court says you can get around traffic checkpoints. There must be a way out. That's the legal. That's the legal requirement for checkpoints in Tennessee. The state of Tennessee, there has to be a way out. And in the state of Tennessee, if they're non-compliant with that, then they're breaking the law. I don't care who you are. If you're in an official capacity and you break the law, you deserve to be called out. There shouldn't be any breaks for you. There shouldn't be any special considerations for you. If you're operating in a special capacity and you break the law, you deserve to be fired. You should never work in an official capacity ever again. And you should be charged and thrown in jail. That's just how it is, buddy. I don't care how nice of a guy you are. That's just how it is. You signed up for that when you signed up for a public job. You know, it sounds harsh, but you have to take these measures to stop the bad apples from getting in. Everyone talks about the few bad apples. We got to get rid of them, because if they stay there, they're going to make the whole lot rotten. Got to get rid of them. Get them out of there. For some reason, that's a controversial idea, and I don't know why. I guess it's because, again, people are afraid of making other people uncomfortable. People are afraid of uncomfortable ideas. Oh, no, what will they think of me because I said that bad cops should be fired? That's not a controversial position, and it's not even an anti-cop position. It's saying bad people shouldn't work their jobs. Pretty simple stuff. So if there's a traffic checkpoint that's set up illegally, they should all be fired for operating knowingly illegally. They should all be fired. And we haven't had that here. Now, I'm not saying we have had that here, but if it does happen, they got to be fired. That's just how it is. Get rid of them. I don't care how nice of a guy they are. Get rid of them. And something that people get all riled up about is the whole traffic checkpoint thing. It's ridiculous. And by the way, there has to be notice as well that you're going into a traffic checkpoint. You can't, or a police checkpoint, I suppose is the right way to put it. You can't just surprise people and stop them without legal precedent. That's illegal. It actually is a crime. Believe it or not, policemen can commit crimes without it really seeming like a grievous crime. And it's not a grievous crime. It's a violation of your rights. That's as grievous as you want to think it is, I suppose. It's something that happens, though. And it's something that we have to watch out for. It's something we have to be on guard for. Because if we keep letting it happen, or if we let it happen in the first place, it's just going to keep happening and will eventually be stepped on all the time. And that's not something you want to have happen to you in your country. Now, unfortunately, it seems like it's already happening here. We're kind of okay with being stepped on all the time, but we can't allow it to keep happening. We can't allow ourselves to constantly be stepped on. That's why it's so important to know your rights. Now, be respectful, but know your rights. There's one guy who was saying, oh, if you're just not driving drunk and you don't cop an attitude, there won't be any problem. Well, how about this? Don't stop people illegally. You know, I get that you don't want to be there, and I get you're having a bad day, and it's punishment for you to work there and all that fun stuff. But guess what? I don't really care. I'm not going to cop an attitude at you because I'm not a jerk. Some people are. That's their problem, and it's your problem too. But guess what? You're operating illegally. Sorry, man. We have a problem. You know, that's just how it is. It's nothing personal. It's just constitutional. You know, people think that because you make a constitutional argument or you make an argument for people's rights, you suddenly hate everybody. You know, you're like, oh, he doesn't like cops because he doesn't like traffic checkpoints, or he doesn't like people who are policemen. Even more, you know, that's the bigger one. He doesn't like people who are policemen. It's not the occupation, it's the people too. And it's really not. You'd be surprised maybe how many people I don't have a problem with. You know, there's a long list of people who I really don't have any problem with. It's their job maybe, or how their job is being operated in the 21st century that I have a problem with, but not really them personally. Like, I'm sure there are nice TSA agents, but if you are working for the TSA, I'm sorry, but you're operating with an illegal agency. That's just how it is. It's unconstitutional. You can't just search through people's bags unreasonably. You have to get a warrant. You have to get a warrant. It's in the Fourth Amendment. It's pretty simple stuff, by the way. Fourth Amendment says this: the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. This says searches and seizures are unreasonable, shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The TSA needs a warrant for every bag they check. That's the legal way to go about it. That's uncomfortable, and that has ramifications. Someone might sneak a bomb on a plane, but that's the sacrifice you make for freedom. That's what they're talking about with the tree of liberty's got to be watered with the blood of the patriots. Patriots aren't just soldiers, right? And soldiers are patriots. No doubting that. But people are patriots too. People who fought for the revolution were patriots. People who supported the American cause after the revolution were patriots. You might be a patriot. I like to think I'm a patriot. Most of the people who work here are patriots. I'd say all of them are. Patriots, right? People who believed in their rights. That's what it is. And there is a risk. There's an inherent risk in having rights. That's part of the freedom. You have a risk. You are constantly, potentially in danger because of your freedom. And that's how it works. That's not a bad thing. People, for some reason, think risk is an inherently bad thing. Listen, you take a risk every time you step in a car, right? You take a risk every time you walk out on the street. You take a risk every day you wake up. You take a risk when you go to bed because you might not wake up. There's always risk. That's how it works, and that's how America works. We understand risk, hopefully, anyway. This is Best Shot here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com. Get us on the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. That's TuneIn Radio on your smartphone. You can listen to us streaming live anywhere in the world. Colin Cowherd is coming up next, the best sports show, best national sports show in the world, right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, hotnewstalkradio.com.
Exactly. Mostly